Welcome back to the next committee meeting of the Bellingham City Council. That committee is Public Works and Public Safety, which is chaired by Councilmember Terry Borneman.
Thank you, Michael. Joining me on the committee today is Jean Knudsen. Roxanne Murphy is also on this committee. She's not here right now. I haven't heard otherwise, but I anticipate that she'll be coming right now. Okay, so we have 7 items before the committee today. And the first item is an interlocal agreement for advanced life support services. Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Bill Newbold with the Fire Department. Before you, for your consideration, is a interlocal agreement for advanced life support services. This is between the City of Bellingham and principally the Whatcom County as a result of the EMS levy that was passed at the end of last year, 2016. And Mannix McDonald will step through a couple of the highlights of it, but the basis of this contract is very similar to the previous contract that we had with the county, with a couple high level of exceptions in there that Mannix will note. But before passing it over to Mannix McDonald, I do want to capture the good relationships that we've had with the county, working collectively with Tyler Schroeder and Tawny Helms of the Executive Office, as well as working with Fire District 7 directly. They are a third party to this contract and working with their Fire Chief Larry Hoffman and their Division Chief of EMS Ben Boyko. The 3 parties sitting down together were able to reach some agreement and really put together what we feel is a solid contract that we recommend approval of.
Thank you.
Mannix.
Mannix?
Mannix McDonald, Division Chief of EMS. I had the luxury of joining the team back in June of this year and then became a part of the negotiating team with the county on this matter. As Chief Newbold says, this is a contract that has continued over the years with the county, and there are a few specific differences. The difference, as Chief Newbold has already pointed out, this is actually a third party or 3 people involved in the contract with Whatcom County, City of Bellingham, and Fire District 7. One of the other highlights that we have is the contract is last for the next 6 years, a total of 7 years from the beginning of 2017 with the initiation of the EMS levy. In addition to that, we have developed what we call a per unit LS cost. So prior to setting the levy rate at 29.5 cents, we were able to sit down with the county and with the other partners in this agreement and agree on how much it actually costs to operate a paramedic unit. And so that value is represented in this contract. Through the life of the contract, there will be increases. The first year is a 3% increase, and thereafter it will basically be CPIW with a floor or a minimal increase of 2.5%. After the first 3 years, we'll have an opportunity to sit down with the county and be able to have better working knowledge of the actual costs of the paramedic program, and we'll be able to negotiate increased costs based on actual costs. One of the obligations from the city is that we will provide quarterly and annual reporting to the county on the use of the money and the actual costs of providing ALS service. What else? This contract will also include a provision for paying for the EMS supervisor, the EMS 1 operation. So those are the key items or the key highlight differences from the previous contracts with the county.
Okay, well, thank you. Committee?
I move to authorize the interlocal agreement.
Yes.
Thanks for recognizing me. I don't serve on this committee. I'm trying to understand the benefit to the general fund or the headroom that this would provide.
I have to apologize. I didn't hear the question. Could you restate it?
Sure. I'm trying to understand the impact to the city's general fund, if there is one, and what kind of headroom that would provide, if there is any.
Okay, I believe I understand that. And what this contract does is provide for full cost recovery of delivering ALS service. If you remember in the past, the City of Bellingham contributed a little bit more than $1 million a year to operate ALS. We provided that out of our general fund, as well as the county made contributions out of their general fund. With the passing of the EMS levy and putting this contract into existence, we are no longer relying on any general fund contributions from the city.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, seeing nothing. All those in favor of the motion, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll recommend approval this evening. Thank you very much. Our next item is a bid award for asphalt for streets, and it's bid number 65B-2017. Ted?
Good afternoon, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. As was mentioned, this contract before the council is for asphalt repair services. It's a contract that multiple city departments use for maintenance of asphalt and installing some minor asphalt projects. It is a one-year contract with the option for renewal for a total of up to 5 years. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Western Refinery Services out of Ferndale, and staff recommends council award bid.
Okay, committee? Okay, yes, Michael?
Excuse me, Ted. Thank you, Terry. How does this contract work? So there's a dollar amount, but do we have to purchase a certain amount of concrete, or is that the dollar amount would be if we purchased X amount and we actually guarantee a rate? How does it actually work out if our use is less or more than expected?
It's a good question. The contractor price is based on estimated quantities, so we estimated how many tons of this product would go where. We don't have a fixed price that says you're guaranteed this amount of money. If we do less, they get paid less. If we do more, they get paid more. It's an estimated amount based on previous year's work and the amount of budget we have available. But if no work is needed, then they don't get paid anything.
So it's really guaranteeing a rate and that they have the exclusive contract for a year.
Correct.
And you'll be around $432,000.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, answer aye. Aye. Okay, we will recommend approval tonight. The next one is a bid award for Smint for Streets, bid number 64B-2017.
Thank you. Again, Public Works Department, very similar. This is for similar but related to concrete work, so sidewalk, curb ramps. The city does quite a bit of work out of the operations side of Public Works and the Parks Department, where we may replace wheelchair ramps that no longer meet ADA standards. We may install wheelchair ramps where some don't currently exist, install short segments of sidewalks to perhaps fill a missing gap, but not capital related. So this is done out of the operations group on an as-needed basis, and similar to the previous contract, the bid was for a unit price. We estimate that our annual concrete related work is around $800,000, and the bid was based on that amount. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Conorup from Stanwood, Washington, and staff recommends council award bid.
Yes.
I just really appreciate Public Works keeping up on a lot of these projects, because that really helps with the longevity of all of these different areas. So I'm going to move that we award the bid to Conorup Construction.
Gene.
Same old thing. I should get a parrot up here and teach it how to ask this question, but have we used them before? Every time I see a new name, I always ask this question.
Yeah, and it is a new name. It's not one that we've used before. So their references and their abilities certainly match with the bid that went out, but it's not a contractor that Public Works or the city has used them, to my knowledge, and again, out of Stanwood. But they met all the requirements of the bid. They were the low bidder, so we will see how it goes. And again, it's a one-year contract with the option to renew for up to 5 years, so performance will play a big part in that.
Okay, thanks, Ted.
Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll recommend approval of that tonight. Our next item is a return activated sludge, the RAS pipeline repair update at Post Point.
Thank you. Again, Public Works Department, along with Eric Johnston and with Rob Johnson, our plant superintendent on this item. This is an information item. We wanted to loop back in with council and the community on the status of the RAS pipe, the return activated sludge, down at Post Point, the wastewater treatment plant. And as council will recall, we had a failure of that pipe inside the plant back in early May of this year and have been operating in an emergency mode as we've been repairing the RAS pipe. And so Rob's going to walk through a short PowerPoint here, lots of pictures of how the project has progressed. Happy to say that we did meet the schedule and got the permanent installation in place before we started seeing heavy flows down at Post Point that require the permanent structure to be in place. So walk through the presentation and then be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Bob?
Hi, Robert Johnson, Superintendent of Plants for Public Works. Again, Post Point Treatment Plant, return activated sludge, RAS repair. So the timeline, as Ted indicated, the pipeline failed in the early morning hours of May 6th, which shut down the secondary treatment process and several ancillary processes due to the flooding that occurred based on the pipeline. We had most of the plant back up and running within a few short hours, however, had to install a temporary pipeline to provide some limited capacity for the treatment plant, and then we completed that process in November, early November, to put the plant back up to full capacity, and we'll walk through some of that. So here's a picture of the failure results. On the left, you can see where the pipeline actually fell off an elbow, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see where the pipeline failed in the RAS corridor, which is below grade, which caused 3 feet of flooding inside the basement corridor, taking out several of our processes down at Post Point. One of the indications here is this hangar structure. We'll talk about that later in the presentation as part of the cause of failure. So we did commission a failure analysis as we were going through the emergency repair and upgrade. We completed that emergency analysis, and we have a good understanding of what caused that pipeline failure through that very detailed analysis we did through Corello Engineering. Really, the indication from the failure analysis was the hangers. Again, another picture of the pipeline laying in the corridor. This is a 30-inch diameter pipeline, and it was supported by 1.25-inch pipe hangers. You can see this pipe hanger here on the right-hand side down in the basement. This plate is the stopping point for the pipeline. Everything else was into the concrete roof structure and below grade, below the pavement at the treatment plant. So we wouldn't have been able to see this upper section of the hangar, and we can talk about that a little bit, and I'll show you some more pictures. So the original design called for embeds into the concrete for the pipe hanger. That's on the right-hand side. What we got was the contractor bored through a prefabricated roof concrete structure and supported the pipeline with a retaining plate and a retaining nut. And this retaining plate and nut was directly buried in the soil underneath pavement at Post Point. And that's ultimately what caused the failure, was that exposure of that retaining nut and plate in the soil, which caused the nut and plate to corrode over 25 years, and it ultimately failed and the pipeline came down. So here's a picture of where we dug up the pipeline in the pavement. Here's a worker grabbing soil samples and things. Here's a picture of the retaining or the all-threaded 1.25-inch structure that held the pipeline. And here's the failed retaining nut and more failed rod structure. So we had 13 of those fail, as indicated in the report, which unzipped the pipeline over time and dropped the pipeline from the ceiling. Here's one of the retaining nuts and plates still intact, but you can see the corrosion in that plate and nut as it's occurring. So part of the damage that occurred when the pipeline failed, when the pipeline dropped from the ceiling, the weight of the pipe oblonged the pipe, so it effectively destroyed the pipe. One of the other things that indicated in this picture that may be hard to tell is the interior coating of the pipe had failed over a number of years. So it was an epoxy coal tar coating, and that failed also. And we'll talk about some improvements that we made. Here's a picture of the flooding sort of after the fact, after we started pumping down. You can see in this picture it was taken from the stairs, so it's looking down. But there's the 3 feet of flooding on the wall. This is our polymer system, which was flooded out during the failure. So we did make some improvements along with the repair, items that had failed or flooded out. So we replaced several motors, and we upgraded those motors, chemical feed pumps, the plant boilers, and ultimately the return activated sludge line. So there was numerous equipment failures associated with this pipeline failure. One of the other things that it did was take out our biological system for our secondary treatment. We were down for about 5 days. This is some pictures of the temporary pipes that we put into place. However, they weren't good enough to run the plant at full capacity, and based on where we're feeding it in, it limited us to about 40 million gallons a day, which during the dry season, if the pipe was going to fail during the dry season, was the time for it to fail. So these are some pictures of Rain for Rent came in and helped us out really quickly, and we got the plant effectively back up and running in 5 days. Again, the failure of the interior coating of the pipe. When we put the pipeline back in, we went with bolted flange fittings as opposed to a Victolink, which is a clamped base fitting, adding structural support for the pipeline, and put in a modern coating that should last the life of the pipe. So we did make some improvements out of the failure. Here again, here's a part of the pipe that had not fallen, but you can see in this picture the rigidity of the hanging system that supported the pipe before. This is a very heavy pipe full of return activated sludge being supported by these hangers. They were good enough at the time, but as corrosion caused the nuts to fail, obviously the weight pulled that pipe down. Here's what we replaced it with. A very large I-beam and structured rod or structural steel that we could actually inspect. So we went from a suspension system to a support compression system, which is much more robust. And the other thing we took advantage of during this process is we extended the supports up to support other pipelines where we could. So you can see that there's a hanger on this pipeline. We also supported it. So we made some improvements to other areas in the basement so we could avoid failures elsewhere. So we finished the installation on November 9th. We pressure tested on that day and put the plant back in operation on November 9th, just in time for the rainy season. So we, with the timing of how this failed and how we got everything back in line, it actually saved us from violating any permits by giving us full capacity of the plant. So we're back up and running today at full capacity. Everything is back online. Everything is up and running. Some of the things that we wanted to do during this failure was honor our permits. We had one very minor violation at the beginning of the failure. After that, we maintained the plant in full operation for the capacity during the entire failure and cutover of the new pipeline. And the other one of the things that we wanted to do was make improvements where we could. So we took a lot of those motors that had failed and replaced them with super efficiency motors. And that's something we try to do at plants every day. When things fail, we try to put something better back in place. So we put super energy efficient motors in that, some of those motors increase energy savings by 15%. Same with the boilers. We put in a high efficiency boiler system for heat and water. Both boilers were destroyed during the flooding. Again, we just want to thank our local contractors who showed up in the very early morning hours, some of them, to help us get the plant back up and running and respond, and then helped walk us through the entire process. So this is just saying thank you to those contractors. Here's a summary of the costs for the different areas where we had failures or things that we went in to replace. The baseline is $1.5 million to take a catastrophic failure and put the plant back up to actually better than what it was before. So As a result, we have a new pipe support system. It's supported as opposed to suspended. One of the other things that we did with this is now we're inspecting all of our pipe support infrastructure throughout the plants. This pipe, so you're aware, is the largest pipe that we have suspended, and so it was the one that if something was going to fail, it was the worst one to have fail. Our other pipes are much smaller, but we're still inspecting them anyway. We wouldn't anticipate this kind of failure in the future. So the other takeaway is we're no longer operating in emergency mode. We're back in full operation with the plant. So I'm going to open it up to questions.
Yes, Gene.
Just a comment. Thank you for the presentation. Thank everybody involved. It sounds to me, it looks to me that we dodged a real bullet with everybody jumping on as fast as they did and going over it. So just thanks to everybody involved. And thanks for bringing forward and letting us know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sorry, Terry. We'll forward that along to the rest of the staff. I would add that the report that we had done on the failure, where we had engineers take a look at the hangars and see what the cause of failure is online. So that's on the city's website. If you're interested, we could also email that to you. But all that information on the failure is on the city's website.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to thank the staff for doing such a great job of getting it up and running in a hurry. And I do appreciate, the failure analysis that was done. I think that is important. And so thank you for the great job, Roxanne.
I just wanted to add, I'm really glad everybody's safe. That's our top priority, so thank you for all that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
With all the repairs that you did and then looking at other systems, we did have that instance where somebody had to go down into the sludge in order to turn some things off. We had discussed opportunities for building in redundancy. I didn't see you talk about any of those. So are we in situations now where nobody will have to go into a situation like that because we have built-in redundancy outside?
Excuse me. Yes, the short answer is yes. The operator on duty at the time made a decision in the heat of the moment to enter the gallery and shut that pipe off at that particular location. It was the right decision to make at that time. There was another alternative where he could have shut off the water from a different location without having to enter the gallery. So the plant is built on a basis of redundancy and reliability. One of the things that is an outcome of this failure is it's always a good opportunity to look at how we do things and how we train staff to respond to emergencies. Partly as a result of this, we have instituted a new safety committee that is specific to plants. So in addition to the Public Works Safety Committee that deals with all of Public Works as a whole, given the heavy industrial nature of the plant's facility, have formed a committee of the plant operators, the maintenance staff, and the lab staff to very specifically deal with the plant safety and those types of issues and to do more types of those drills and scenarios. It's always easier in hindsight to look at what we could have done, but it's always a good opportunity to learn from these things and move forward. And so we're taking advantage to do that. In addition, we're also looking at some of the systems that are also a very high hazard at Post Point, notably the chlorine system. You may recall that up at Whatcom Falls, we have made a decision, and recently we're successful in converting away from the chlorine gas and onto a sodium hypochlorite system. We're also considering that as an option down at Post Point in the very near future. That'll be very expensive, but I think in the long term that'll be beneficial to our staff and to the public to eliminate that chlorine gas and replace it with a less hazardous system. So opportunities to look at different ways of doing things and trying to act on those as well. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that item was information only. The next item is Water District 7 request for services for Gradual Valley 2 short plat.
Yeah, thank you, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. After the packet was printed, there was a request by the applicant to delay this item to your second meeting in January, and that was to provide additional information to council so that you had the full record. I will say that I provided an executive summary of the applicant's request along with what I thought was pertinent information for your decision. The applicant requested that the full record be provided. So rather than cut your time for review short, they agreed to push it off to the 22nd.
Okay, thank you. So that we'll jump to the next item then, and that's the bid award for Columbia Neighborhood Water Quality Improvements and Storm Drain Maintenance.
Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson, joined by Chad Schulhauser, Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer. This is an exciting project, one that we have been working on for quite some time, a water quality project in the Columbia neighborhood. be putting in a series of water quality facilities, as mentioned in the summary statement, stormwater filters, infiltration facilities. The lowest responsive and responsible contractor is Faber Construction, and staff would recommend that council award to Faber. I would like to note that this project's being paid for through a combination of a grant and loan from the Department of Ecology, along with surface and stormwater rates. So the ratepayers paying for some upfront cost as well as the repayment of the loan. So we'd be happy to answer any questions, but our recommendation is to award.
Okay. Committee, Gene?
Move approval.
Okay, any, Michael?
Yeah, so this kind of, for some reason, it brought to mind the I&I pilot project we did over in a different neighborhood. The I&I has to do with inflow and infiltration to our sewer system. That happens when the ground is heavily soaked and you have old pipes. A lot of this is putting some of that water into the ground. How are the sewer pipes in this neighborhood? Are they as leaky as the ones that were, because it's an older neighborhood as well. Do you remember doing any I&I work on this neighborhood? And the I&I project in general, the idea there was to see what the benefits were to the system, and they were substantial, and then maybe go elsewhere where the I&I was also a problem. Is Columbia one of those areas?
We did, in preparation for any of these projects, we scan all the utilities, and we did scan the sewer in the system. It's holding up. And we are replacing some of the stormwater in areas, and then we're not touching the sewer for right now in this area. And Craig may have some more details if you want to talk about that.
Hi, Craig Mueller, project engineer with Public Works. We did take a look at the scans for the sanitary sewer, and especially in the areas that we were going to be doing extensive paving. Worst thing to do is to go back to 5 years after you pave something, and it just makes everyone look bad. So we did look at those, but it was limited pretty much to the areas that we really the 3 blocks that we're going to be intensively repaving, which is towards the southern end of this. The system is fairly old, if you're there, and this project does address some of the storm sewer piping. We will be relining a significant section of it, as well as improving drainage by upgrading catch basins and lateral piping from catch basins to manholes in the affected intersections that we mainly picked the worst ones and did the most we can with the budget that's available.
It's a good question, Michael, and we do continue to focus on I&I. I was talking to Chad. We're annually putting out about $1.5 to $2 million in sewer main replacement lining projects that are focused on areas where we do have the most infiltration. We have a pavement and utility rating committee that looks at all the utilities as well as the pavement condition, and the sewer mains in Columbia have not risen to the top of that replacement list, so their relative condition is better than some in other parts of the city. I will say that we've been pretty successful, in addition to the larger I&I project that Michael referenced that was in the Sunnyland area, which Craig was the project manager on. We continue the I&I efforts, and we have not had an overflow at C Street within our 5-year permit cycle. So we're allowed one on average over the 5-year period, and we haven't had one for at least 5 years. So we continue to make some progress in that area.
You say Columbia is not on the top of the list. What is the area that's at the top list on I&I right now?
Michael, we've got an item before us. I know this is areas of interest, but I'd like to keep it to the bid at hand right now.
If I could say one other thing with the inflow and infiltration. We are addressing the storm sewer piping, not the sanitary, and we are having, I believe, 10 rain gardens that will be infiltrating water into the ground, but we'll also be vastly improving the drainage and the capacity of the system simply by upsizing the laterals. Most of them, meaning from the catch basin to the manholes in the affected intersections. Many of them have undersized pipes. The gradients are almost flat, choked with debris, with roots. We will be greatly improving the capacity of that too, which would then reduce the amount of water that would be infiltrating to the ground. And all of that gets into the rehabilitated storm sewer system will then run through 3 filter vaults and be treated to an enhanced condition prior to being sent to the bay.
Just a quick question. I know sometimes we do such great infrastructure work, but community members don't ever really get to notice it or understand what was done. So what kind of outreach will we do to Columbia to help them understand what's going on?
That's already begun. There's been actually quite a bit in probably the last 2 years. It was the locations of these rain gardens were on somewhat of a voluntary basis. We want community buy-in for adopting these and maintaining them. Of the list that of positive responders, we narrowed it down to 11 that were viable. There was one that backed out of it probably about 4 months ago. It was an access issue to them. So we were down to 10, and then we are treating about 80 acres of runoff through the filter vaults. So there's been the community outreach to get the sponsorship of the rain gardens. There has been, at every stage, we send out a mass email to anyone who is interested, and I know that ends up with the neighborhood association as well. I also have a mailing list of everyone in the project area, plus our standard 500 feet in any direction, because there's an elementary school there. It's high pedestrian traffic. And yeah, we're going to be dealing with ADA ramps, so it is going to be impacting a lot of people. And we'll be sending out a mailing probably in 2 weeks to over 1,000 recipients, as well as the regular emailed updates, including the school, WTA, you name it. Then once we actually get started, because this is a rather large area, we will be doing targeted mailings, door hangers, saying your street is going to be impacted from these days, rather than, hey, the project is coming.
Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, we have a motion before us. No, this was information only.
This is bid award.
Oh, this
it's a
is
bid
the
award.
bid award, that's right. Oh, getting mixed up here. Yes, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay, we have one more item before us, and that's the bid award for Mahogany Avenue improvements. Glad to see this finally coming forward.
Yeah, this is another one that has been quite a while in the making. Mahogany Avenue between Northwest Avenue and Pacific Highway, just north of Bakerview, so behind the newly constructed Costco, which will intersect with Arctic, which is the street that runs off of Bakerview to serve Costco. Will continue up and intersect with the newly constructed Mahogany, which will have a traffic signal at Mahogany Northwest, a traffic signal at Arctic and Mahogany, and be stop controlled down at Pacific Highway. So this is a project that came out of an agreement between the developers in the area, the city. It has funding from federal funding through the STP program. It has state funding through the Transportation Improvement Board, as well as some local funding through street and TBD and some utility money. So low bidder on this, responsible and responsive bidder was Strider Construction out of Bellingham, and staff recommends approval.
So moved. I'll move approval, I'm sorry.
I'm really glad, because I know there were so many obstacles getting this done. So it's taken quite a while. So glad to see that we got through all the obstacles. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll recommend approval.
Thank you.
End of